Good evening. Now having arrived, declare the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 in session. We're meeting in the Harry Butters Selectmen's Chambers, Town Hall, 566 Washington Street, Norwood. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast live and taped by Norwood Community Media. We're going to start tonight's meeting with a pledge of allegiance to the flag and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have three members here, one member ill, and another member, our chairman, who's ill, but is joining us from home. So for a matter of convenience, I'll chair the meeting tonight, but she is with us, Amanda Grow. First order of business is review approval of the minutes for November 18, 2025.
I'll move for approval, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, it's supposed to poll,
We
right?
could do the.
Ms. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Okay, thank you. Your guest is with us?
Yes, Mr. Parrow.
Before you start, though, I think it's appropriate with the group before us and the subject matter before us to acknowledge the passing of Ed Williamson. Ed was a Norwood firefighter through and through. Ed was kind to everyone he ever met. He was a true firefighter. He would, even after his retirement, he would follow anything that had to do with the Norwood Fire Department, keep abreast of what was going on. Always had great interest in his brothers and sisters down at the department. And there's no doubt at all that if he was still with us, he'd be here this evening. So I just want to acknowledge Ed's humility, devotion, and kindness. He left a lasting impression on every one of us who knew him. He was a true role model and someone to admire and emulate. So thank you, Ed, for your time with us. With that, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have with us Jack Parrow, who is our consultant, who has completed a fire staffing study, a long-awaited fire department staffing study. I've reviewed the study and concur with Mr. Parrow's recommendations. The chief has reviewed it, and we have asked the fire union to review that study as well. We have representatives from Local 1631 here as well as the chief. Mr. Parrow is going to take us through the study. Board can certainly ask any questions, and then I have just a couple of financial slides and process slides to follow his slides. With that, Jack, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the town for allowing us to do this study. I think it's a very important study. It's done at a very unique time. You know, we have the face of Fall River looking at us with with manning issues. I want to thank the general manager and HR for all the information I was able to get from them very freely, and thank the department. I was able to meet with the chief, the union vice president, the deputy chief, and a couple of other lieutenants helped a lot with the data that we needed for this study. And I'm assuming that everyone here has read the study, and so I'll be referring back and forth. I have, the slides are going to be very brief and just touch on some of the main points. But again, I wanted to thank everybody involved for their cooperation and ability to get me the information or get us the information that we needed. So if we could go to the next slide. I'm just getting mine. I have notes on mine. So I'm just getting, whoops. There we go. So, why this study really matters. As we looked at Norwood Fire, and after talking to the chief and talking to the general manager and the department, we realized the amount of calls that Norwood Fire answers. And the calls from 1920, we did a 5-year look back. So the calls from 2020 to 2024 had risen 33%, which is, an additional third of the work. And the staffing remained pretty much the same over the last 20 years from what we were able to gather. So they're doing, 33% more work with the same amount of staffing that they have. And of course, the purpose of the study is to ensure that, the Norwood Fire Department can deliver and meet its mission to provide effective, safe, and sustainable fire and rescue and EMS services to the community. And as we get through the study a little bit, you're going to see the importance of EMS and how much EMS has really increased and increased the workload of the department. So the significant increases of emergency calls. If you look at page 11, figure 1, we broke it down by the number of calls that we had looked at over the past few years. That's where we were able to get the 33%. And you can look at the graph and at the last graph on the page, and you can see the significant increase. And it's been pretty steady every year going up. Over the past 20 years, again, the department has remained at 15 personnel, and they currently dropped to 14. And pretty much looking at the history over the years, is they're pretty much running at 14 personnel every single year. We go to the next slide, please. The overview, we did do an overview of the fire department, just so we all think we know what the fire departments do. But on page 9 through 11, we did do a good look at the fire department and gave a pretty good overview. As you know, they operate out of a single station, and they share that with the police department. The staffing structure is 65 uniformed personnel. We have the chief, 2 deputies, 5 captains, 9 lieutenants, and 48 firefighters. They have 4 groups that work 24/7, and each group has 15 members. And again, they supply as we just spoke about, fire suppression, advanced life support, technical rescue, hazardous materials, and they have a great fire prevention and inspection office that they use. Next slide. The rising demand and strains, as we talked about, significant increase in the calls. Again, the calls rose in 2020 from 5,393 to 7,154 in 2024. Again, a 33% increase. And again, if you look between pages 11 and 13, we broke the calls down. So on page 11, we have the total number of calls, and that's what you see, the 5,000 to 7,000. And then we look at the EMS. In the EMS, you can see is pretty much holding the same line. And then the non-fire calls, these would be, the everyday calls that we respond to, which would be, water calls, calls for assistance, calls to help different people. But the daily operations call today in 2024, it's gone up to 20 calls per day. And 4 of those, which are concurrent calls. So we looked at the concurrent calls. Again, you flip to page 17 and 18, you'll see the concurrent calls. And a concurrent call is when, one piece of apparatus, an ambulance and an engine are out on a medical call, and while they're still out on the medical call, they get an additional call. And that requires the second piece of apparatus to go out, or the second ambulance and another piece of apparatus to go out. And during that, the beginning of this year, it was really the only time we could really pull that data. From January to the end of August, there were 1,007 concurrent calls. And if you look at them, we had 548 were back-to-back calls with 2. 207 were when they had 3 concurrent calls. 94 were where they had 4 concurrent calls. Now that may be one of the apparatus may have gotten back, but before all the fire apparatus was back in quarters, they had gone on 4 calls. And then they had 158 that they had 5 or more. So they had 5 or more calls before we had all the apparatus sitting back in quarters ready to respond to a call. And why is that important? It's important because the way the fire department, the Norwood Fire Department is based is they have 2 engines, a ladder, and the captain operates out of a command car. And the way they're staffed currently is they have an engine which would go out the door to a fire, and they'd be the first responding piece of apparatus with 4 firefighters on it. And then we have the ladder, which brings all the tools and gains entry and does proper ventilation. They'd be second to the fire. And then we have the 3rd engine that's required to go and grab a fire hydrant and make sure that the first 4 firefighters that have gone into that building to either put out the fire or perform rescues have water, so they don't run out of water in 5 minutes, the water that's on the truck. So if we look at all those times, those 1,007 times, we didn't have 3 pieces of apparatus, so we weren't properly equipped, just even with equipment, let alone manpower, to respond to a fire. Escalating mutual aid. If we look at, let me just see what page they have. On page 19, if we look at page 19, we can see the escalating mutual aid down at the bottom of the page. So what mutual aid is when Norwood Fire doesn't have enough apparatus or the proper apparatus, maybe being an ambulance, both their ambulances are tied up and out, they have to rely on surrounding communities. And mutual aid is something that fire service is built on. Norwood provides mutual aid to other communities, but they also request mutual aid. And the request for mutual aid over the last 5 years has increased 250%. So if you look back at 2020, if we look at the total number of mutual aid requested was 211, and now it's gone up to 234. So 234 times, 534 times a year, Norwood needs assistance from another community to come in, and that averages about one and a half times a day. So every 2 days, Norwood is requiring another community to come in to provide services to the town of Norwood 3 times every 2 days. So it just shows the increase and the demand being placed on the fire department over the last 5 years. Next slide, please. So we looked at 5 comparison communities: Burlington, Natick, Randolph, Stoughton, and Watertown. And it was kind of hard to find these communities because we were looking for communities that were similar in size, similar in number of calls, and also provided ALS ambulance. And if you look at the communities, the populations are very similar. And if you look at page 21, excuse me. Apologize. If you look at page 15, you can see the communities that we looked at, and then the different breakdown of the areas we addressed, which is population, daytime staffing, which is the personnel, the fire chief, the deputy chief, fire prevention, daily shift staffing, their duty minimum and maximum, and then we looked at their different engine staffing, how they staff their ambulances, how they staff their ladders, did they have a command vehicle, total calls per year. So if you look at the populations were very similar. Norwood being 31,000, and Burlington being the smallest with 26,000, and Watertown, I believe, was the biggest with 35,000, with Randolph, no, actually Natick had 37,000 people. So the populations were very similar. They both provide fire and EMS, fire prevention, and all the services that Norwood would provide. And we looked at the average number of personnel on each shift, which was somewhere around 17. We also looked at how they staffed their engines, and we were looking, towards, what NFPA 1710, which is the national standard for full-time career fire department, who met those standards. And there's only a few departments in the Commonwealth that do meet those standards. They're very difficult to meet. Everything's a balance on financial ability, but those are standards that we're all trying to get to, and those are the standards that you heard being thrown out during the Fall River incident. So if you look at page 23 to 26, that explains what NFPA 1710 is. And pretty much NFPA 1710, just to break it all down, if you look at page 24, it looks at what, and these were exercises that were done, very professionally done, on what it takes to put out a single family home. So just a single family, no basement, building fire. They looked at that, and if you use the ladder into operation, it required 17 people on scene within 8 minutes. It also requires, in looking for four firefighters on every piece of apparatus. And the reason being is the 4 firefighters on every apparatus is, much more efficient than anything else. And for example, if you have I know they run one of the engines, Norwood run one of the engines with just 2 firefighters on it. So if that engine, the other engine and the ladder were tied up on the call, and that ladder had to go out, that engine had to go out to a fire with 2 firefighters on it, it leaves somebody at the pump, because they have to operate the pump, and it leaves the other firefighter on that piece of apparatus on the end of a hose and standing out in front of the building, because again, they won't meet the 2 in, 2 out standard. And it's not safe for one person to go into a building. But even with 3 people on a piece of apparatus, you have on a fire apparatus on a pump, one person has to stay in the pump to control the pump and the water into those hoses, and it only gives you 2 people to go inside a building to fight a fire. And you can imagine how overwhelmed they would be trying to fight a fire and also rescue someone out of that building. But what the comparison showed us was Norwood, with the population, really, in the middle or even a little bit less than the other communities, had the highest number of total calls, with Watertown, with about 7,000, 6,000 more people, coming up a pretty close second. And if you look at the EMS calls, Norwood's EMS calls were only second to Randolph, and it was only by I think 100 or so. So it goes to show with towns in the similar area in the 128 belt and similar populations that Norwood is definitely one of the busiest departments around. Next slide, please. So the challenges we identified, the growing dependence on mutual aid. The EMS now it grows 250%, averaging again 1.3 to almost 1.5 calls for mutual aid just for EMS per day. The training is we found was almost non-existent. And it wasn't that the department wasn't trying to train. The problem is when you're running 20 calls a day, when you set up, they go out behind the station and they start to set up to do an evolution, they're being called out on a call. And, the fire departments and engine companies operate as a team. So it's not like, you can all of a sudden just send 4 people away, to go on a call and then, you wait for them to come back. And when they come back, if it's a concurrent call, another company's already gone. So the call volume has really disrupted the ability for the department to train. And training, I can't tell you how essential training is to the fire department. It's safety for not only the firefighters, but for the people in the community. The paramedic burnout, the ambulance is just about on the edge of whether, it can be handled with the 2 ambulances that they're currently running. Right now, they run ALS ambulances, which is advanced life support, and there are 2 ambulances with two firefighter medics, or a firefighter medic and a firefighter EMT going out the door. And they're averaging 10 calls a day to the hospital. So, and then there's an additional probably 15% of the calls, medical calls that they go on that are non-transport. So it's a pretty big strain, and the strain is really showed in the 250% increase in dependence on other communities to come in and help out with the EMS. The facility constraints, the department, is very tight right now. If they're fortunate enough, and we're fortunate enough that this study is adopted and the staffing goes up to the levels that we're looking at, the station is going to be pretty much busting at the seams. So we feel it can handle the increase that we're looking for currently, but as the department gets busier and busier, and the additional personnel are needed down the road, or you need a 3rd ambulance, the current facility is going to have to be looked at, either expanded or an additional station is going to have to be added. Something's going to have to be done down the road. So it's something that you're going to have to look at in the future. I don't know when your future planning is being done, but it's something that should be put on the drawing board in the future, whether you're going to make a bigger station, new station, add an additional station. I mean, it all comes with cost, but it's something you need to be aware of, and something that you might have to consider down the road. Next slide, please. So what we're recommending is an increase in staffing on each group. We'd like to see each group expanded from 15 to 18 members. And this will get us in a line with NFPA 1710 standards. We don't expect, currently we dropped down to 14, so we have 15 on the shift today, and we dropped down to 14. We would expect to start off with 18 members, and then, between the general manager and the union and the fire chief decide what the manning would drop back to. So, we may start with 18 scheduled for the day and drop back 2 or 3 people. I know the department I ran for 17 years, we would drop back 3 members, and it helps with the, with some of the overtime, which again, everything's a financial concern, but it helps with the overtime. But we also have a chance to have additional members there. So instead of having the 14 we have today, starting with 15 members on the beginning of the shift, if we have 18 members on the beginning of the shift, we would hope to, keep those numbers up somewhere around 15 or 16. Currently, there's typically it's 2.7 members per 24-hour shift that are off, and that's could be they're out on on vacation, it could be extended sick leave, it could be line of duty injury, it could be that that position hasn't been filled yet because we had somebody retire and it takes about a year to bring somebody into the fold, get them through the fire academy and everything else and get them on a shift. So there's many reasons that we don't always have that full complement that people are out. But our hope is to stay as close to 1710 on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as possible. With those 17, in order to get the 18 people, we would hire 12 additional firefighter medics, and we would promote 4 of the current staff to lieutenants to ensure proper staffing. So we talked about 4 people on a piece of apparatus. The 18 will give us that, but they also on the staffing, it's not just 4 people, it's a fire officer and 3 firefighters. So right now, we have an officer on the first engine and the ladder truck, and we have an officer and we have the captain in the car. And on the second engine, there are just 2 firefighters. So our proposal would be to put 4 people on that second fire engine, which would not require, but would be much better suited if we put a lieutenant on that 4-man piece of apparatus. Would have a lieutenant and 3 firefighters, and again meet the 1710 standards, NFPA standards. We talked about with the general manager and the chief about hiring a floating medic. And I just mentioned how long it takes someone to, once somebody retires, to get somebody on board. So, you have to do the hiring process. You have to get somebody on board. You have to get them fitted. You have to get them acclimated to, Norwood's way of doing things. And then you have to send them off to the fire academy. And then they come back to the fire academy. Sometimes and right now, I checked when we did this study, there was a 7-month wait to get into the fire academy. So if you hired someone today, before you had them trained out of the fire academy, which is a 10 or 11-week course, program they have to go through, it's going to be 7 months before they can even get into the fire academy. So it ends up taking about a year before you have a trained firefighter that you can put on the floor and have riding a piece of fire apparatus. And just doing simple math, if a firefighter, typically works 32 years, you have 64, 65 members on the department, you're retiring typically two to 3 people every year. So to have this extra swing medic, firefighter medic, it helps us maintain the daily staffing on each group, again, to try to maintain as close as we can to NFPA 1710. Enhanced training, we talked about training before. It's almost impossible right now to train on duty, again, because, the department's going out 20 times a day. And what we've come up with, and a lot of departments do this, is they allow firefighters to go off duty and train for 32 hours. So this would allow them to have 32 hours a year of dedicated training to work on different firefighter training, whether they go to the fire academy, where the training is brought in-house, and you bring training in-house from the National Fire Academy or the Mass Fire Academy, and we compensate the firefighters for coming back and doing that training off duty. It's similar to what the police do. I think the police have 40 hours of training per year that's mandatory for them to go to. This would be very similar for the firefighters to make sure they're getting the basic training that they need. The other is to appoint a full-time training officer. Should be the rank of fire captain, and that would put that person on even par with the shift commanders on each shift. It's difficult for, to give that position to a lieutenant or a firefighter when they come on a shift, and they have to, tell the shift captain when they're at a lower rank that this is what the plans are for the day. It's just, you need some type of parity there. Plus the job dictates that it's a very important job. And what this would do is the fire captain would be able to keep accurate records. So if you were trying to put in some daily training and you do get interrupted, at least the training captain, will be able to document what training each firefighter went to. If they were interrupted, of course, they wouldn't get credit for that. But currently, right now, there's really no system to do that. And lastly, we recommend that all fire apparatus be equipped to ALS capabilities. So right now, the ALS capabilities sit on the 2 ambulances. When those 2 ambulances are out of town, the ALS capabilities cease until that out of town community brings in an ALS ambulance to supplement. Now, many times both ambulances will be tied up at the hospital, and there could be 2 fire engines and a ladder sitting in the station, respond to that EMS call with staff of firefighter medics, and they really don't have the ALS equipment on the vehicle, on the pumps and on the ladder. So we would recommend that all the fire apparatus, the 2 engines and the ladder be equipped with ALS equipment. So when they're on scene in 4 minutes or 5 minutes, they're able to provide ALS services immediately. And then when the out-of-town ambulance gets there, which they're delayed, they can be 10, 15, 20 minutes out, the people in the community in Norwood have already been given ALS treatment on scene. Next slide, please. So if we look at the, tried to project a little bit coming in future years. So if you look at page 35 and page 36, you'll see what we looked at. If you look at the chart down the very bottom of page 35, and if we keep going at the rate that we're going at, and it's pretty consistent rate, this is a straight line up. In 2029, calls could increase from 7154 to 9250. So that would be another significant increase. It's 5 years, so it's going to be another third increase. So it's something that you'd be more prepared for with the 18 full-time personnel that you have. You may have to maintain 18 people on the shift and not drop back those people to save financially. But however, you would have those employed, and it would give you a little bit more options. EMS is projected to go, if we look at that, it's projected to rise from the 5,100 up to 7,500. Again, an annual increase, and would be a 35% increase over those 5 years. Current ambulance system, again, we talked about it. It's really nearing its capacity. I think it's pretty much at its capacity today, and it's going to have to be considered for some type of either an additional ambulance or additional ambulance at some portion of the day. I know the town of Franklin had the same thing. They were running about 420 mutual aid ambulance calls into town every year. So what they decided to do was to place an ambulance Monday through Friday during the busiest hours from 7 in the morning to 6 at night. And they were able to capture about 150, 160 of those calls. And they did it with kind of a hybrid system where they had their training officer was an officer and paramedic. That training officer was there Monday through Friday and would be one of the people that would go on that third ambulance, and they would hire back an additional person during the busiest times of the day to run that third ambulance. And they felt they recouped about $150,000 to $160,000 by doing that over the course of the year. And then we talked about consideration of a second station, to either help maintain response times or just physically be able to fit personnel into a building if you had to expand where we suggested that you expand to. And then we would like, we think the town should do a strategic risk assessment. And, the risk assessment would look at everything, all the fire risks in the community, the EMS risks in the community, why the community is so busy. And then the assessment will give you a guide to the future staffing, apparatus, a type of apparatus, and then if you do need a future facility, what type of facility that you're gonna need. Next slide, please. So just to kind of summarize the key takeaways, the service demand has gone up 33% over the last 5 years. The EMS calls are up 41%. The current staffing is lagging behind the growth. Again, no staffing in the last 20 plus years. The staff need for a strategic staffing expansion. We recommend, again, going to 18 members per shift. That would be additional 12 firefighter medic with 4 lieutenants, and additional training and resources for training. And again, that would be the 32 hours of training that we recommend be able to be done off duty. And then proactive planning for service and quality. So, do the risk assessment and be able to look at where the department's going in the future. I'm assuming the numbers will plateau at some point, but we really don't know where that is. It's surely not the trend right now. And I think the community needs to be ready for that. Then we go to the last slide, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Before we go to questions, did you want to add something?
I have a couple of financial slides if you want to talk about the cost implication, but I don't know if you want to wait until after you've had a chance to talk about the staffing piece of it. It's your call.
Throw them up.
Okay. So going into the analysis of how we would fund such an item, and I'll get to what it would cost, there's a couple of options. Option 2 and 3 here are essentially the same thing. Option 1 would be to put a contingent appropriation, an override contingent appropriation on the May annual town meeting warrant, and then schedule an override vote for a June timeline so we can implement beginning in July. Option 2 would be, do we increase the amount of free cash we're using to offset the budget? That would be, again, a May annual town meeting and effective in July. Just the brief pros and cons of that. That would just roll it into the operational override we know we're going to need for fiscal 28 or 29. We should not use free cash in general for adding to headcount, but that's an option. Option 3, we have generated a significant amount of new growth this year. So do we book that new growth into the budget specifically for these items? That being said, that number reduces the amount of free cash. So it is just sort of running things around in a circle with no option, with no real difference. But technically it's just a difference, if perhaps one without distinction. Those are how we would go about funding this, and the timeline is important because we'd like to move forward with hiring this summer. If we wait a year, the concern would be that, well, now we're waiting a year for the larger operational override, possibly 2. And what if we do kick that larger operational override off 2 years? Then are we just waiting? How long do we wait before we finally bite the bullet and address the staffing? Now that sounds great, except we haven't talked about the cost yet, but we'll go through that. I apologize, this is a little tough to see on the screen, but I did provide everyone with a cost breakdown. You'll notice we have both the cost of the positions, an estimated cost for some of the benefits. We would have to decide whether we would want to include those in the override or not. I don't necessarily know that we need to, but to present the total cost. I have a placeholder in here for some police salaries. As you know, we've also, we're trying to comprehensively look at public safety staffing. We still have to whittle those numbers down, and the chief and I have to work on that. But if we did include something like that, you're looking at a total cost about $1.9 million. 2.4 if you factor in some of the benefits and other items. We'd have to decide whether we want to increase the budget for those, or we're able to absorb some of those into the budget. So what does $1.9 million look like in terms of the tax impact? Sorry, my screen here is making this a little difficult to see. The average home in Norwood, it would be about $110 annual tax impact, maybe $120. The monthly tax impact would be about $10. So that's how we would do it, that's what it would cost, and that's what the impact to the taxpayer would be.
Your numbers, because you added pensions, insurance, and so forth,
Yep.
should probably be higher than Mr. Paolo's in his report. And I didn't add them up, but somehow they seem to be, like they, if I did add them up, they'd be higher than yours, no?
No, it may be broken down a little bit differently. You know, what we project here for the fire positions is what a base salary is. The health insurance numbers, we could project a full family plan for everyone, a single plan for everyone, or no plan. We tend to project at the single plan level. The pension number, as everyone knows, is really just an estimate. It doesn't actually get directly added into the budget. And then where I have the officer pay there is where you account for the rank differential. That is assuming most of these firefighters would actually be coming in at the paramedic level, but would probably be closer to entry level. We don't know that that's the case. On the fire side, we know, the police side rather, we know that the staffing will be a little different. So if you added a detective, for instance, that's more of a mid-grade position.
All right, questions? Mr. Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for all of this. I don't want to waste the opportunity to talk to the folks in the room, but did any of this surprise you when you read this? Or it's pretty much what you had expected? So I think for us too, it was what we expected.
Yeah, they're nothing new for, I think, anyone.
I think one of the interesting things that I picked up in this is that, and Jack had touched upon it, the 17, that number for an average single-family home. We don't even cover that number just on a regular shift, right? So we're already at a disadvantage fighting fires and responding. And I know, we've had you in before, Chief, and you've been very articulate about the increased calls and the mutual aid. I'm sure some of our neighbors would love to see something like this come to fruition, some of these recommendations, and alleviate, and not that we don't help them either. But I thought the information was well presented, Tony, and I appreciated the summary.
Thank you. Questions, comments, Mr. Donnelly?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the report, it's very thorough. In regards to the 250% increase in mutual aid, assuming we can go forward with the financial plan, is there any idea in terms of what kind of impact the staffing changes would have on the rate of mutual calls that we're currently asked to receive? I know you can't put an exact number to that, but would we be less dependent on mutual aid if we were staffing at these levels?
Yes.
Is that question to me?
Anybody wants to answer it?
Yes.
I mean, we're giving you staffing suggestions that we would like to see. I'm sure, the chief's the one that really will know how to run the department properly. I mean, moving some of these people around, I don't always recommend jumping and cross-staffing, which would be, you'd take two people from one piece of apparatus and maybe assign them to the ambulance. I know they have multiple ambulances there. So that could help reduce a lot of the calls. As we talked about the medical aid calls, typically a medical aid call, probably we only transport maybe 75% of the medical aid calls we go on. So by making the ambulances ALS, there'd be a lot of calls that we would go on, or Norwood would go on, and be able to handle those calls just with the ALS engine, where they weren't going to transport those people anyway. Today, you need to start that ambulance from the community, the neighboring community, because you can't provide those ALS services. So I think the ALS services and maybe some staffing things that the chief may decide to do and sit down with the union and work with will definitely help to reduce those.
The hospital is also the operative question there. A return to the hospital with an ER in town will virtually eliminate those needs for that need for mutual aid.
Right.
You outlined a series of costs, both in the report and what you've given us, Mr. Mizuko. I caught a reference in the report about, since you would be you're moving to 18 per group as opposed to current 15, but we'd maintain the minimum staffing at 14. And you, Jack, you've made a reference to our current budget for substitution pay is hovering around 900,000. And I guess there's an estimate in the report that given the higher staffing level, your opportunity to go to minimum staffing is reduced under the new staffing scenario. You're pretty confident that I think you quoted maybe a 50% reduction in cost due to substitution pay. That seems to make sense to me, but I was just wondering whether or not you could talk a little more about how you made that estimate in terms of the savings there.
Well, I just think right now, if we put the 18 on the shift and we're running down to 14, that gives us 4 people off on the shift. I'd like to see it stay up around 15 somewhere, but if we run down 4 per shift, right now we're only allowed to run down 1 per shift, and then we're filling for 2 positions, and we're averaging 3 off a day. So every day, 1 person we run down, and then we're filling for 2 positions on every shift. That one with 18 people, the chances of having to fill for those 2 additional people are going to be reduced dramatically. So that's where I see the savings. And the other thing with the 900 and something thousand, I figured those on, firefighter, paramedics at year 2, because it almost takes a year to get them in place. At year 2 with a bachelor's degree, which is a pretty good perk. But typically, the people we're hiring off the street today, firefighter, medic, are fairly well educated. So those figures that I have in there are on the high side, but I'd rather be on the high side than the low side. But I think by being able to run down, I experienced in my department, we were able to run down 3 people a day, and that saved us quite a bit of money in the overtime. And then to have that additional floater, that person would be able to fill in for any long-term illness, long-term line of duty injury, or retirement. So that position there is going to even further cut back on the need to fill the overtime.
And I guess just the last question I had in the report. You've got a recommendation. I know the costs are pending regarding equipping the 2 engines in the ladder truck with ALS capabilities. I guess my question would be, how does that compare with just making a decision just to purchase a 3rd ambulance? How close to, if you were to outfit the 2 engines in the ladder trucks with ALS capabilities, does that substitute for the need for a 3rd ambulance, or is an ambulance always the better option?
Ambulance doesn't transport.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it all depends on the services that you're going to provide. You could, this way, you'll always be able to deliver. If you have 1 piece of apparatus available, you'll always be able to deliver ALS with typically about 5 minutes. That's what the response times have been. If you just turn and staff another ambulance, that ambulance could be out of the community too, and you could have 3 ambulances going to the hospital, and that happens 500. That would happen over 500 and sometimes a year, and then you would have no ALS aid to be able to give in town if you didn't have it on the apparatus. So, the fire apparatus can't transport anybody to the hospital,
right,
but it can surely get you ALS equipped vehicle to a scene within 5 minutes.
Right.
To provide ALS service.
Helps, but it's not a substitute for an ALS ambulance. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Grow, any questions, comments at this point?
Yeah, I also wanted to thank you for the report. It was very thorough and very informative. I was glad to see the section that called out the interference with training, having people sort of dropping what they're doing to go respond and then trying to come back into it. Even if you do try to pick the lesson up afterwards, you've sort of broken the chain of thought, and I think that's a really important thing to be aware of. One question I had, when we talk about the length of time it takes for them to get into the academy, has that amount of wait time been fairly flat, or has that also been going up or down over time as well? Is that something for us to keep in mind? Like if it's 7 months now, is it going to be 7 months next year or the year after?
Chief Bailey?
It fluctuates somewhat, but it's pretty much static. It's pretty much
Okay.
7 month wait.
Okay,
It's
great.
gone,
So
it's
at least we
gone
can
up
kinda
over the
depend
last
on
couple
that.
of months, but it does vary.
Fluctuates.
It fluctuates. So the last hire that we had, we got into the May class, but now they're already filling July and August, so it depends.
Okay, good to know.
It depends when you hit it in the cycle of the year fiscally, and when other towns are hiring. So if all the towns are hiring at the same time, that wait time is longer. So, just a matter of when you hire.
All right, so those were my only questions. Everything else looked really straightforward.
That it? Okay, my 2 cents is, it's interesting, lot to go over. This has been done kind of as an in-house study with the consultant. We haven't had a lot of, outside input into analyzing it, kicking it around, talking about all the variables. And I think we need to do that. I was very involved in 2006 study having to do with substitution cost problems that resulted in reviewing the whole staffing of the department. And in 2011 or 12, whatever it was, looking at expanding into EMS ambulance, ALS ambulance service. And that, again, obviously has to also involve staffing and what we do with it. So it's all very intricate. You have to compare everything. And one of the questions I had written down on my note, and then you mentioned it afterwards, was firefighters' equipment, where? We're gonna run out of pretty much room where we're gonna be housing these people and equipment, and how we deal with that. So those are all things we have to take into consideration as to how we move forward. Also, you mentioned risk assessment. That's a big part of, keep referring back to 1710, that's a big part of 1710. And we really haven't done that, we've just accepted the minimum. And is that really all it is? And are we in 5 years going to be looking at doing this again? And does it make sense to wait the 5 years or to look ahead now? I think we need to throw all these things around and come up with the answers to them. Now, I think the manager pointed out in his comments about budgeting or trying to go forward, that if it turns out that support any part of this and need to do an override to do it, we have to do it very quickly so that we could be acting on this in May. So the study, if you will, that I'm talking about is something that has to, it's not so much a study as in-depth conversations about how one recommendation affects the other recommendation, affects how we're operating or how we're gonna operate in the future. And I think we need to be doing all that as soon as possible. But I know I wouldn't be ready to jump in tonight and say, we've got a report, so therefore we support it. But we all know, I think, you've kind of alluded to it, that we weren't surprised by any of this. We kind of know where the department stands within the community and the community's needs. And it's all a matter of how best to address it. 1, 2, 3 are all of these recommendations. I guess unless there's some kind of motion, we would just accept the study, the report, and plan to discuss this a little more among ourselves in the next few weeks and decide the process at that time.
I think that's a fair motion. Maybe the motion can be, we do it, formally accept the report and agree that early in 2026, we reconvene here to examine in depth and follow up with Mr. Mizuko and the fire chief regarding specific actions that we might be able to take.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, just to add to what you're saying, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think the emphasis on the timeline and moving fast one of the things that the report probably doesn't mention because is when you look at that call volume increase and the runs, is morale of the people that are there now. And I think the last thing we want to do is lose good firefighters and good EMS because they're burned out. And so, regardless of what is in the report, like, I think that is the human element of it too. And I know we all are thinking about that as well. So moving quickly, at least to get, put this on the table and make a decision on how we might move forward is really important.
Okay, did you second the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything further on the motion? Chairman Grow, your vote, please.
Sounds like a yes.
That's a yes, Mr. Lane.
Yes.
Mr. Donald?
Yes.
Chairman, yes. So it's unanimous, well, one absent. Mr. Sad is under the weather this evening, more so than the chairman is. Chief, before you leave,
Yes.
ambulance, you want to talk about ambulance fees?
We do have the chief here, so we do have a proposal to increase ambulance rates, which we have been doing pretty religiously to make sure we're keeping up with fees.
That's 3.4 on your agenda.
And we have a recommendation for the board, and the chief or I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
This is basically just a survey of other towns, analysis of them, and coming up with what looks like a fair number.
That's correct, and I made it a modest increase of just 5%, so the difference on all of them would be, on the BLS would be a $105 increase, on ALS 1 would be a $126 increase. ALS 2, which is our more serious calls with different modalities, and it's basically more interventions that are required that kick it into the ALS 2 level. That would be at 178, and the mileage would be a $3 increase. They all come out to roughly 5%.
Questions, comments?
Looks pretty competitive with the departments that you've referenced in the report. Pretty extensive list of Greater Boston fire departments. And I do note also that they were last adjusted in November 24.
That's correct.
I think it's a good idea to do an annual review such as this. I thank you for the information. That's all I have on my commentary.
Motion to accept and approve the
So moved.
recommended changes, rate changes. So moved by Mr. Lane, seconded by Mr. Donnelly. Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Lane, Mr. Donnelly.
Yes.
Mr. Plasko, yes. 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, just before the chief heads out, so is your thought the staffing study as an item would appear on your next agenda? Do we want to set a separate workshop meeting? Are we looking to put together a working group? I just don't want to lose, we're not in a rush, but I don't want to lose focus. I don't want to be here on January 9th or 10th, whatever our next meeting is, and say, oh, all right, well, we got
Yeah.
questions, let's put it on an agenda.
Well, we don't wanna
Personally,
lose
I
this guy,
recommend a
too.
workshop.
What's it, say that again?
Personally, I recommend a workop, that's what our focus is. That's what we're talking about.
I think that's a great idea.
There's enough there to not be worrying about who's coming in next and everything.
I agree.
We want to give it the attention it deserves.
Okay, I will work with you and the chair to pick a time in January. It'll probably be an off-schedule meeting, but that'll be what we'll do. We'll have, staff here, we'll have the chief here. If we have questions ahead of time, that will be helpful, but it would be a meeting dedicated solely to teasing that out.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll do it that way. Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, I guess that brings us to our next appointment, if they're available.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have my agenda with me. My
There she
papers have
is,
gotten-
come on in. Are you here alone, or do you have a group?
Just myself.
Okay, step right up. Sarah Dixon, here to discuss the Norwood 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much for inviting me here this evening. I'm pleased to be able to update you on the status of the comprehensive plan. I do have a slideshow. Is it possible to put that up?
Yes. Just a second.
While you get that going, I can briefly give you a recap of this project up until this point. You'll recall that we began this work about 1.5 years ago. Phase 1 of our plan was really oriented around creating an existing conditions survey. This was a study of all the demographic data that we have available to us. Our consultant worked with the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee to do an evaluation of all the existing resources that we have here in Norwood, really to kind of come up with a document that it identifies what our current resources are, where the gaps in our resources are, and how our population is expected to grow and shift over the next 10 years. Phase 2 moved into what I really consider the heart of our work on the comprehensive plan. It was heavily based on public participation and community engagement. That's where we really started to canvass the public and try to identify our big goals, our visions for where we want to see the town of Norwood in the next 10 years. Since then, we've been gradually working, continuing that public participation theme to narrow our focus. So where we started out with really large, big ideas, goals, visions, organized around core themes, we've been gradually working to assign strategy ideas to each of those themes. So you can see here that we are about to wrap up phase 3, and we'll be moving into phase 4. Phase 4 will be tying all of those ends together, writing the actual report, making it look nice, and kind of figuring out what our implementation plan is. Next slide, please. So just to update you a little bit about what we've been up to since I was here last. Throughout the fall, we were engaging with stakeholders to really review that list of strategy ideas. We did that in a few different formats. Again, the theme here is trying to engage as many members of the public as possible, and so we've elected to do that by offering as many different ways to participate in this process as possible, trying to meet folks where they are. We've been conducting interviews with department heads, regular meetings of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. We held a series of technical working sessions that I think nearly all of you were a part of, where we convened stakeholders around thematic work areas and tried to bring together people to weigh in on a particular area of interest, organized around our core themes. And lately we've been doing roadshows where we take groups of strategy ideas to boards and committees to talk, specifically about themes and ideas that would be within that group's area of focus. So, for example, I conducted a roadshow with the school committee last week and brought forward all of our strategy ideas that had some sort of connection with school programming, operations, and buildings. We've been doing that with as many boards and committees as we can, and we're about to wrap up most of that work this week, actually. We have a goal prioritization survey that is open now and will be open through mid-January. That's another big push that we have right now to try to engage members of the general public that aren't perhaps on a board or committee. So I encourage folks to go on our website and take that if you haven't already. And we had an open house earlier this week, and we have one more open house for the general public to attend in January. That's scheduled for January 12th, and I'll go over the details for that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So just to give you an update on engagement, since that was a primary focus of our plan, the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee had set a fairly aggressive goal to hit about 34 participation points over the course of this plan. As a reminder, a participation point is not the same as a number of individuals who have participated in the plan, since we hope that folks will engage with this plan more than once. Perhaps earlier on when we were talking about visions and goals, and certainly lately when we're talking about actual action items and ideas for implementation. Every time somebody engages with the plan, that's considered a participation point. We arrived at 3,134 points by basing it on 10% of the total population. So at present, we are just over 2,000 participation points. That number is ticking up steadily and surely over, again, all of these different ways that the public can engage with our process. We are on budget with this project, and we are roughly within our timeline. We did extend our timeline here for the comp plan by a couple of months. In phase 2, we were starting to experience some momentum building with the public participation, and we didn't want to cut it off before it wound to a natural end. So we did opt to elect to push that out a little bit. But generally, we are on schedule as well. Next slide, please. So this, I believe, was in place already when I came to you last, but just to review, we created a vision statement and then organized 6 core themes that reflect the public's priorities. These do roughly tie into the required structural components of a master plan under the Massachusetts Planning Statute. Welcoming neighborhoods and housing choices, a connected town with safe and reliable transportation, a thriving economy and vibrant business centers, a town that celebrates its culture, history, and identity. Norwood is green, resilient, and healthy. And the last is engagement, infrastructure, and services. Next slide, please. So again, the strategy ideas, these are the meat and potatoes, really, right? These are the action items. It's great to have a vision, an idea, and a goal, but how exactly are we going to achieve that? What are we going to do to get there? The strategies are the specific ideas that we derived from engagement with stakeholders, with residents. They're specific, they're measurable, they're action-oriented. Most of them have some sort of a time-based goal for them, and we can assign them to particular implementation groups. So again, something relating to a school program might be assigned to the school committee at the end of the project. Next, please. The ideas largely come from our public engagement. Some of them come from our existing strategic plans that we've been doing regularly over the years. A lot of them are ideas from members of the public who participated in our surveys and piped in with their ideas that way. Some of them are generally accepted best practices in planning, and some of them are successful initiatives that have occurred in other similar communities where perhaps a similar community has had a similar goal to us and been able to achieve it with a new idea. But the vast majority of these ideas did come from our public engagement. We were at nearly 180 ideas when we first started with our strategy list. We have been working to refine, I shall say, that list to a more manageable number of strategy ideas. And that work continues through our road shows and through the goal prioritization survey that we'll have open through January. Next slide, please. So we're in the heart of roadshow season. Again, these are when we're taking these strategy ideas to boards and committees, really kind of working to get into the details with each of these groups. I think it's been a phenomenal exercise. We've had some really terrific conversations with these groups. As you well know, all of our boards and committees are filled with really dedicated, talented volunteers who are very passionate about their areas of expertise, and we've really enjoyed being able to shop some of these ideas with these groups, kind of helping walk through the advantages and disadvantages of each one, figuring out what concerns are, what would the work need to entail if we were going to pursue this idea, what questions should we be asking. Talking about capacity and cost implications of each of these ideas, and then kind of rating them. As I said, we're refining this list, so some of the ideas have gotten grayed out, or we move them to the parking lot, or the bike rack, depending on how you mobilize around town, where they might be saved for another plan or just held off to the side while we focus on the others that make more sense for the community at this point in time. Next slide, please. So it would be challenging to do a roadshow in the same format that we've done with all the boards and committees with the Board of Selectmen, just because your level of oversight extends to nearly all of those 179 strategy ideas. So when Selectman Donnelly and I had been talking about how best to incorporate involvement from the Selectmen, which is a priority of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee and of mine, we thought that it made sense to extend an invitation to have individual discussions with you. I did submit for distribution with your packets for this evening the full list of strategies. I recognize that's a very overwhelming Excel spreadsheet with a lot to look at. And so, it would be unwieldy to go through in this type of format, together. I know that, again, some of you have looked through those and participated in our technical working sessions, but I would like to personally invite each of you to reach out to me directly to meet with myself and our consultant, Jen Goldson, who's the principal from our consulting firm, and go through, any of those ideas that stand out to you. The rating exercise that we've been doing with our boards and committees is assigning a number to each of these ideas. 1 being, please take this off the list, I can't stand it. And 3 being, I love this so much, I would make no changes to it. 2 being, I have questions, I like half of it, but not the other half. I'm concerned about, some parts of this. I would like it with some amendments. So if any of these strategies ideas stand out to you, I would encourage you to reach out to me and we can set up a meeting and do kind of a one-on-one roadshow, as it were. I think that may be the most effective way to be able to encourage you to share your thoughts and your views on this plan. So we hope to be wrapping up these conversations probably by mid-January. The next slide, if you don't mind. It is an iterative process, so we're still in the process of tweaking, revising and changing, but by the end of January we'll be hoping to really kind of finalize these recommendations. And I just want to make a quick plug before I wrap up with the 2 dates that stand out for public participation. Certainly this is an invitation to each of you as selectmen, but also to any members of the public who are listening in. We have our regular meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee on December 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center. That's an opportunity to kind of listen in and see firsthand the work that this group is doing. I would be remiss if I didn't take another opportunity to call out how exceptionally dedicated each of our Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee volunteers are. These 10 folks have really been rolling up their sleeves and doing a phenomenal job. So they'll be meeting on December 22nd. Probably a little bit tough for a lot of folks to come to that one, being right before the holidays, but hopefully January 12th will be a little bit more of a convenient time. That's our next open house. That's at 7 p.m. at the Simone Room at the library. And that will be an open house style event from 7 to 9 where folks can stop by for some hot cocoa and donuts and conversations with each of our steering committee members about these strategy ideas, and a great opportunity to ask lots of questions. So that concludes my report to you. I'm available if you have any questions.
Questions, comments? Ms. Grow, anything?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you so much for coming in to see us. I'm very excited about all of this. I've been watching it and I'm really pleased with the amount of engagement and the different creative ways we've tried to think of, how else can we try to reach people and get input? How do we organize that input? So I think it's all been very excellent. One question I had was, as we've been ingesting everything that the community brought forward, were there any times that we saw times of the community say that there's a best planning practice and a community desire and they're not in alignment? Did we see much of that, or did it seem like a lot of what the community wanted was very similar to what, from a planning perspective, we're like, yeah, that sounds great?
That's a great question. I actually think that, and I should say, oftentimes the goal with these plans is not necessarily to achieve perfect consensus across the community. We're such a diverse group of folks with different, backgrounds, and I feel like that could almost be an impossible task. But I will say that the goals that we kind of zeroed in on for this plan, we did see a lot of consensus across the community on a lot of these bigger ideas. For example, open space and preserving and creating outdoor areas to recreate is a goal that enjoyed a lot of public support and of course is a consistent best planning practice. But I like to say the devil's always in the details, and how exactly do we do that? And that's really, an area I think where planning practice can only go so far. In Norwood, we alone know our financial situation. We alone know what our current natural resources are. We alone know and have a sense of what's worked in the past, what we've tried, what we haven't. So I think that the creative energy, in this process has been leading us to a group of strategies that are tailored to what we're trying to achieve here. And I think certainly planning best practices can support that, but the real work that the committee is doing is very individualized to Norwood.
And then another question I had is, like you say, the board, we cover such a broad range of topics. Are there areas that you find that you would find it useful to have the board weigh in on, because we would be able to help tie break something that has been being deliberated heavily? And there might not be, but if there are some of those, then I'll make sure to prioritize looking at those areas in that big list.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that it would be phenomenal to receive a little bit of feedback on core theme 6, which is about engagement, infrastructure, and services. That's really about our municipal infrastructure. There's a lot of items there about staffing and programming and infrastructure that I think would be helpful to have the selectmen weigh in on. And then
Great.
I think also number 2, core theme 2 about transportation, actually involves a fair amount of public infrastructure when you're talking about sidewalks and public buildings, and I think that might be a helpful one to hear your feedback on as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you. No further questions.
thank you. Mr. Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. It was great to participate in some of this, and it was nice to hear you give a shout out to the group, the committee. Way back when I was chair, that was one of the fun things that we got to do is choose the committee. There were a lot of great
process. It was a good process, but
but I mean, it's cool to see it come full
60
circle like
interviewed.
this. And, the town meeting vote, obviously, but then putting the committee together, seeing all the great work, seeing your leadership. So it's just, I'm greatly appreciative of all the work that you've done. I know it's been a lot, and it's very cool to see this. Can't wait till next month.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. I'm on the committee, and if you had told me when we had to evaluate and look at that first list of 179 strategies in order to vet and reduce them to a workable number, I thought that was crazy work. I didn't see how it could be accomplished effectively. However, the process really has been very effective. I know that Mr. Lane and Mr. Plasko have participated in those technical work sessions, as well as a variety of folks from all parts of the community. And that engagement, that sitting down with those folks and getting their feedback has really been quite a good. I've really enjoyed it, to be honest with you. This week I conducted a road show with the Cultural Council and at the Senior Center, and I continue to really admire how engaged those folks who are coming to these meetings and offering their input. They're just great engagement, and I can't underemphasize how important it is that we have those conversations thoroughly with folks. We are coming to the final end of public engagement, and you're right. I think that January meeting, the 12th, is it? At the library is, just judging from, we had one last night at the Senior Center. We had an open meeting there, and I think we had about 20 people come in, and we had a table staffed with the 6 themes, with the strategies, and people were really engaged with reading them, telling us which ones really appealed to them versus others that were less appealing or needed some work. It is a tough time of the year to get away, but I'm really pleased to say that we have another opportunity in January for that public engagement. And I'm hoping that those folks who haven't been able to get to some of these meetings are get a real shot of doing that in January, because time is running short at this point. And I guess the final plug I would give is that if you're unable to participate in the open session, we have a great survey tool. It's online, it's on the town site now, it's on the comprehensive plan site as well. And folks can go to that survey tool, and they can give their input online, just very similar to the way they would do it in these public meetings as well. So I would encourage people that can't make that January meeting or haven't been able to make the December meetings, you still have opportunity to do that. And I hope you do, because this is really important work. It really is setting the tone for a lot of planning that we anticipate we'll be doing over the next 10 years. And I think I'm going to stop there and just give my pitch for people to still opportunity to get out there and give your feedback. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Could you explain to me one more time, but stickhead, road shows explained. What's that focus? When's that happening?
Yeah, sure. So these road shows are ongoing. It's essentially the technical working session exercise that I know you participated in a couple of them. It's a similar exercise where you're going through that list of strategy ideas and getting folks' ideas and feedback on each one. Instead of, hosting one by theme, instead we're taking kind of short lists of strategy ideas to specific boards and committees. So we're bringing those strategy ideas that are relevant to that group. So we've done these road shows. We've taken our list literally on the road to Cultural Council. We've been to Council on Aging. We've been to the Commission on Disability. We've been to the School Committee. We've been to the Board of Health. Ilex is up at the library doing one with the library trustees tonight. We are scheduled to meet with FinCom later this week. So we're going and visiting the boards and committees and talking to them about the relevant strategies that, ideally, we're talking about these strategy ideas with the folks who may end up being responsible for implementing them, right? It's important.
That was
to
always
hear
my
their
concern. That's what
feedback.
I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Would we end up getting to fire, police, DPW, because they're going to be potentially affected by a lot of, and we can put down a nice concept, a nice strategy, and this is where the town would like to go, and then find out there's a lot of reality that makes that very difficult. It'd be good to know that up front. I'll just pick on number one, housing, neighborhoods, choices. We have the current housing now that we're going forward with the 3A and so forth, where we have 4- and 5-story buildings. How's that going to affect our fire department? We just had the fire department in here talking about having to add staff and deal with things, and one of the things I pointed out is they weren't talking about the risk assessment. The risk assessment takes into consideration those kind of factors. FM Global, Moderna, mid-rises and so forth, as compared to single-family, 2-story townhouse apartments where they have strip malls. Take all those things into consideration, and that may put us into the next category, which starts to create a lot of expenses and realities for the town to face. And so, do we measure one policy with the realities? And I hate to see us create a document and people 2 years from now say, the committee said we should do this, and then have everybody else say, we can't do that. Does that come into play in this process?
Absolutely. It's probably the first question that most of the groups we visit in these roadshows ask, and if they don't, I answer it anyway. Is what about capacity, and how should capacity and finances influence our discussion and our vetting of these strategy ideas? And the answer that we give is that it's an important consideration, but not the only consideration. This is a 10-year plan, and the honest reality is we can't predict what the financial position of the town will be in 8 or 9 years, right? We have a good idea, but we don't know. It's important in a time of scarcity, perhaps more than ever, to talk about what our priorities are as a community, so that when we're committing our resources, we're doing it wisely. And so we encourage folks when they review these strategy ideas is certainly think about the cost. If creating a pedestrian flyover Route 1 is going to be ridiculously cost prohibitive, then maybe that doesn't make the list, right? But if there are priorities that would involve some expense, but as a community, we have really strong support to advocate for an idea, then it's something worth including on the plan and saying, hey, maybe we take the next 10 years to figure out how to make this happen, and maybe that's the goal. So we try to frame it in that context each time, but we're also very clear these strategy ideas that make it into the final iteration of the plan, it's not a commitment. You know, many of these ideas are study the feasibility of X, right, or look into Y. we can only do what we can with the resources we have available, at any point in time in the next 10 years. But this is the roadmap to give us a sense as to what we should prioritize.
And I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Jennifer Goldson.
Great.
I haven't done that since we did the Affordable
The
Housing
housing production plan.
And
Yeah.
saw her at one of those
Yeah, Jen's
workshops,
great.
and I said, we've got to sit down and talk, so
Well, she would love to sit down and chat with you, so please reach out to me. I can set that up.
will do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just when there's a draft plan largely completed, one of the things we can do is we can run it through a staff review just to see if there's anything that finally did make in there that anyone picks up on and says, gee, this came through, but to your point, an overpass over Route 1, we'd all love it. $100 million by the time something like that actually happens in practicality, but we could do a final review that the comprehensive plan committee can look at, and certainly the board could too, that, hey, when it's all come together, here's these 5 or 6 things that have been identified that may or may not work for whatever reason.
Yeah, without picking on subjects or having a firm position on anything, just philosophically, I'm all for reality checks.
Yeah.
No, that's a good
I
point.
think also, just recalling some of the benchmarking that we did earlier on, is that, the comprehensive plan committee will do its job, and there will be a plan. It goes to the planning board for formal approval. But the work doesn't stop there. The committee work does, but many towns will turn that work over to an implementation phase. And the implementation phase would recognize some of the data points that you bring to the table, Mr. Plasko, in terms of the boards, the committees, and the town staff that would be involved in taking a look at that plan and doing exactly what Mr. Mizuka has described in terms of where do we go from here. So committee work will stop, but the work for the plan will go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Call us anytime. All right, we'll jump back on a new
Thank you,
business
sir.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
3.1, extension of New Year's Eve hours until 2 a.m. for on-premise licenses. That's a typical annual event that we have approved, unless members have some reason to question it this year. Accept the motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Made and seconded by Mr. Donnelly. Ms. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Plasko, yes. 4-0. 3.2, delegation of the chair to approve one-day liquor permits, town common requests, street closure requests, and other similar related administrative items until the board meets again in January, over the holiday period here.
Motion to approve and grant permission for the chair to approve licenses as they may appear.
Seconded by Mr. Donnelly, I
Yes, I
see. Ms. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Plasko, yes, that passes unanimously. Number 3.3, reconsideration of the license of Gemma Kitchen and Bar, Inc. I asked that this come back up, brought forward the fact that I realized about 2:30 in the morning, Wednesday, after we acted on Tuesday, that we hadn't included in our approval the hours of operation, which does go on to the forms that we send to the ABCC. And under the Mass General Law, they have certain hours they can operate under the law that we can't restrict them from once we give them a license, or additional hours if we so vote. There is an interest in maintaining a schedule of services to the public similar to the current operation at the OCC, where morning events and so forth after funerals or whatever. So that would take place prior to the 11 o'clock allowed opening unless we so vote. And in the evening, they'd like to have beyond 11 and be competitive with the other businesses in town. So, and it was pointed out, a good catch by Mr. Donnelly, that originally we're thinking that this would just be 8 a.m. to 1 a.m., but on Sunday, following up on the VU laws, and then another law passed, the hours are 12 unless we vote, and the earliest we can vote on Sunday is 10 o'clock. So I would recommend to the board that we approve Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 1 a.m., and Sunday, 10 a.m. to, so you want to close that late on Sunday as well?
I think they like the timeline. I don't think they're gonna
Just keep
necessarily
it,
be open
just
that
keep it
late, yeah.
even.
The ability, I should say.
So 1 a.m. closing on Sunday as well, unless the board has other feelings.
No.
No.
I would make a motion to approve.
Okay, so second,
I'll second.
seconded. Ms. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. Elaine?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes?
Mr. Plasko, yes. That's unanimous. All right, we already did 3.4. We have a one-day liquor permit for Hometown Arcade for time in January, I believe. January 12th, Monday, January 12th.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for Hometown Arcade. I'm sorry, liquor permit, one day.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Anything further? All right, all in favor? Excuse me, got to do the vote. Ms. Grow?
Yes.
Ms. Elaine?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
And then Mr. Plasko votes no. Memoranda? We have none listed this evening. Manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple items. So the board will likely not meet again until January, except I think we need a short executive session next week on one item. I will work with you and the chair to work out a time for that. We might be able to do it remotely because I believe it'll be relatively quick. I can never completely predict that, but it might just be a 20-minute item. If we can get that set by this weekend, I'll work on the schedule for that. Even though I'm always a fan of saying it's not a TV show, this is the board's business meeting. For the public at home and the board's edification, we do believe Town Hall will be closed to the public next Tuesday. Facilities does have to do some work on the heating system, which requires taking the heat and hot water offline for the day. We'll confirm that by tomorrow. We'll put some notices out. We'll get information on the building. So most departments will still be available by phone. We do have our phone tree system, just like when we have a snow day, where folks are able to call in, but the building will be physically closed because we will have the heat system being worked on. And then just to follow up on the staffing study, we'll look at I call it a January workshop for the board. We'll have the chief there, we'll have some staff there, we'll have finance there, probably HR. So we'll really sort of workshop the issue. Any questions you have ahead of time will be helpful. Is there anyone in particular you would like or think should be invited to that meeting as part of that process?
I think that's enough to begin with. If the process brings up questions, we can have a second meeting with the follow-up of what comes up the first time.
Okay. And that's all I have.
That's it.
That's it.
Ms. Grow, anything to add this evening?
The only thing I had was, I just wanted to thank the vice chair. My illness has been inconvenient and keeping me away from festivities here in town, but the vice chair is doing an excellent job on my stead. And I also just wanted to thank him for running the meeting tonight for me, because I fear the meeting would have gone much longer in between my pauses for coughing. So I'm very grateful. Other than that, if we don't get to reconvene, then I'm wishing everyone happy holidays.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing besides, I think as is tradition, the last meeting before the new year, which if we're not having another meeting, just wanted to formally say that in the spring I won't be seeking re-election, and it's been really fun. We can talk more about it later, but just wanted to say that formally.
Well, we will talk about that more later. I will say personally that I'm not surprised. Young family and so on and so forth. I've been there years ago, and I've talked to many other selectmen I've served with, over 30 of them, that have been in your position, and I understand it completely, but I will say I'm disappointed. Mr. Lane, Mr. Donnelly.
Well, I echo Mr. Blasko's remarks. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Mr. Lane. I still hold out hope that we can influence a different decision. We have time to do that, but that is not for this evening. I did want to give a shout out for a couple of things that are upcoming here. New Year's Day, just a couple of weeks away, on January 1st, there will be a Vanderbilt Pine Tree Forest Trails Walk sponsored by the Trails Committee with assistance, with refreshments provided by Norwood's Orient Lodge of Freemasons. 1 p.m. There'll be a pre-walk refreshment provided by the Freemasons, followed by 1:30 p.m. hike. Start at January 1st. Details are they'll leave the trailhead at Vanderbilt Avenue. The location is adjacent to 410 Vanderbilt Ave. And the walk will combine upland and riverbank area featuring the great views of the Neponset River and including segments of Norwood's Tayet Trail. And for those of you who have been following the Trails Committee, they have recently completed a water crossing on that trail. It is complete now. I'm looking at the flyer, which I wish I could display to everyone here, but the bridge is great. They did a great job, and I think this is also an opportunity for people not only to do a great New Year's hike, weather permitting, but you also see the great work that has been being done by the committee, the Trails Committee, regarding water crossings. And the only other thing I would mention, but we already talked about it a moment ago, a couple of more opportunities. Ms. Dixon did relay that. On the 22nd of this month, the Comprehensive Plan Committee is having a meeting at the Senior Center, 7 p.m., an opportunity for public comment to be delivered there. But most importantly, January 12th, 7 p.m. at the Morrow Memorial Library in the Simone Room. There'll be the open house event for the community, for the Comprehensive Plan Committee. And that's, just like last evening, great opportunity for people to give input into the committee's work, into the strategies that are under consideration. So if you haven't been able to chime in with your input regarding the plan and the strategies that are being vetted at this point, there's a great opportunity to do that in January 12th of next year. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, as I said, there'll be time to discuss your announcements at a later date, but we will do that. And with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
By Mr. Donnelly. Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Plasko, yes. Motion and meeting is adjourned.